Hi, it's Mayor David Stahl with another edition of Total East Brunswick. Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama. We've seen a lot of change in this country with all these different presidents, but there's been one constant in East Brunswick sports, and that's Frank Noppenberger, the successful athletic director of East Brunswick Public Schools. I'm real pleased to be joined with Frank today to talk about some of the memories, as Frank's going to be retiring this year after 37 years leading our school system's athletic department. Frank, it's great to have you here.
Well, thank you for that introduction, and I need to thank you personally for everything you've done for the youth in East Brunswick. I know I've said that to you personally, but publicly, everything you've done from the fields to Heavenly Farms, and I know you used to run the soccer club, and that's why we're successful in athletics because of people like you.
Well, I appreciate that, Frank, and I think you're right. It's really about our community.
Right.
37 years, I can imagine that's been quite a journey. You know, we look back, I look back sometimes on Channel 3, they throw some of the old shows. I didn't even know until a few years ago that you were a very successful basketball coach.
Well, we were lucky. We had a couple good years. I had long hair, and it wasn't gray, but yeah, it was 4 years head basketball coach. We had some great athletes, some good kids. We won a few championships, and it was a learning experience. That was the beginning, Dave, of all year round with sports, basketball, and I think I got the advantage than a lot of people. I was lucky enough to talk to some successful coaches, and they were telling me how they would do it all year round. We did fall lifting and running, and they could play on their own, and it was the season in the winter, then it was spring basketball open gym, and then it was summer leagues. And I just remember we were way ahead of the curve on that, of doing it all year round. Now, if you don't do it, you're way behind. So I had the support of the administration. We had the parents that wanted to be involved, and you know how that is, you need that. And then I had the kids that bought into it. And you know, back then too, most of those kids were all year round basketball players, and that's what you need. We'll talk later about the area of specialization, but that was the beginning of specialization, as I recall it.
Then Charlie King decides to retire. You had some big shoes to fill in there. What was the transition like coming from being a coach into the more the administrative type role?
Well, great question. Charlie leaves being the athletic director, and he was only the second one, becomes the principal, and they kind of asked me, do I want to be the acting athletic director? So being naive, I said, oh, for a year, I'll do that, sure. Bring Bo in as a coach, great guy, we'll work together next year. So I figured a one-year deal would be interesting. Well, 20-something years later, I said, wow, and that's how fast it went. Yeah, it was real interesting from being focused just on your one sport, boys basketball, to 3 levels, to every sport. And yeah, it was a learning curve, just like everything else. And I had to learn a lot of different commitments from the coaches. They all didn't have the same commitment. I had to learn their style, their personality. And I believe it takes 7 to 8 years for you to find out the teacher you are, the coach you are. And the same thing for an athletic director. It took me 7 or 8 years to figure out my style. So there was a lot of adjustments, a lot of changes, and once you get comfortable in doing it your way, not that it's the right way, but doing it your way, it became much easier.
How would you define your style?
I like to delegate. I want them to take the initiative for things, all right? But I want to guide them and let them know, and I want them to come to me. Every coach, every teacher come to me. It's okay to ask. It's okay. It doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing. Ask, and I'll give you an opinion, all right? So I want an open communication. I want you to ask me questions about, should we do this, or what do you think of this, or what about this, or should we play this game, or what do you think of about that? Or and I never told them who to play and who not to play. I'd say, hey, do you really think we can press that team, or do you really think we want to run and gun in basketball, or do you think we should throw the ball more in football? It was all thought-provoking, and my door has never been closed for teachers, kids, or coaches, and I believe that communication was there. I didn't want to be so much their boss as a demanding type guy, but let's talk it through and work at it together.
I think that's very similar actually in professional sports for those organizations that are successful, where the general manager, or in your case the athletic director, provides the overall support, but actually the coaching staffs are the ones who have to have the athletes perform.
Right, and it's and you as well, you understand this. Your job is to give them the best opportunity. Like when you schedule, you want to schedule, let's say 50% of your games. 50% of your games are going to be even. Anybody can win. 56% toss up. You want to schedule a percentage of reach games, like St. Anthony's for us in basketball. And then you want to schedule some of those that you know you can win. And that's a scheduling philosophy I've always tried to stay with when you do your scheduling. And of course, you want to have an even number of homes and aways. You know, it's just like a little thing that you learn. You want the coach's input, but at the same time, no, coach, we got to schedule the better teams, because the ultimate is for the championship. You want to prepare yourself. Bo Henning and Marcus, when they were coaching, they'd play anyone, anytime, because they knew it's going to make them better for the upcoming playoffs or the finals of a tournament.
Yeah. I know that when you talk to some of the student athletes on your own show, you often ask them, are they so much guided by the feel of fair or the thrill of victory? So I'm going to ask the same question to you.
I was the fear of failure. Even if I go out and do the road races, the EB 10K, if I don't beat last year's record, or I don't, my running record, it's the fear of failure, and I don't know why that is. And even as AD, I get so disappointed if we don't win a championship as compared to the joy of winning. Matter of fact, one of our longtime coaches and teachers, Harry Morris, when I was coaching, we had a run. We were doing pretty good. And we just beat Lincoln High School, Brooklyn, New York. They were the #1 team in the city. They came in, played them in our gym. Everything was legit. And we sat in the 2-3 zone, and they were missing their outside shots. So it came down to the end where we made our foul shots, and we won. We just beat the #1 team in the city, packed house. It was great. And then we went out afterwards, have a soda to discuss the game. And I was already thinking about the next opponent. And I'll never forget this. And Harry's not right a lot, but he said to me, you know, Nop, you can't enjoy a win. You've got to learn to enjoy a win. And it stuck with me. That and then the same day, the same season, a kid named Chris Ciotto, we were up at the Meadowlands. This is how you learn from kids. We're up at the Meadowlands. We're playing Perth Amboy in a game before the Nets and the Lakers. Lakers are coming out with Jabbar and all these monsters, and we're in the hallway. So that was excitement. So we end up winning the game, and then the newspaper interviewed me, the whole deal. And I guess I was too much of a negative spin on it. So the next day, there was a snow day, no practice, everything dismissed. I see the kid in the hallway. I said, Chris. He went to Princeton, by the way, Chris Ciotto. I said, what's up? What are you doing here? And he said, oh, I'm late. He says, but you know what, Mr. Nupp? Your glass is always half empty. Wow. It made an impact on me, and ever since then, I wanted to be more positive in everything I did and look at the bright stuff.
I think you've done a great job. Now, look, somewhat similar to you in philosophy, but I'll go back one that you can appreciate. It's our generation. Even Red Auerbach, who was a perfectionist with the Celtics, would enjoy, and I'm not a proponent of it, would enjoy a nice cigar after every victory.
Right, on the court. On the court. Can you imagine that, Dave? Right, I remember that. But the lessons you learn from kids and from teachers and parents, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've changed ideas or thinking after listening to parents. See, and you know this, like being in politics, someone comes in and talks to you, and they make some point, and it may not be changed right away, but it's changed, and then they say, well, he doesn't even listen to me. He doesn't hear, he doesn't change anything. Well, there is a change, but it's a subtle change. So I just can't tell you how many things have changed after listening to parents' ideas, and I welcome them to come in anytime because, you know, they understand.
Well, speaking of change over 37 years, what have you noticed in terms of changes of the student athletes?
Well, I think they're much better in every sport. I think Amir Bell is the best basketball player we ever had, even over a Dave Wall or Keith Monseski, a kid I coached. I just think they're better skilled, they're stronger, they're faster. Well, look at your daughter, the same thing, and your son. Your son could have been think about him back in the 60s, early 70s being a goalie. He would have been there. He would have started as a freshman. They're just better skilled, better trained. They're smarter. Not all of them. The students of the game are smarter. They understand the game. And there's more specialization. And that's a tough one. Yeah. Okay, not me, but if a kid didn't specialize in the sport and play it all year round, he may not have never made that team, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
But by specializing, he increased his skill and became better. So it's a tough call. Do you specialize? Do you not specialize? And I think if they do, they got to decide that in the sophomore year.
I think that's actually pretty good advice, because I know hopefully some of the parents listening, you hear from folks who are still having their children in the youth leagues, whether it's soccer, baseball, football, and they want to specialize at an early age. And I've always been a proponent of, no, at those early ages, you've really got to focus on a lot of different sports. One, just because your body's not formed yet. But I think specialization is important, obviously, when the kids get much older, but too soon sometimes not a great idea.
Right, plus they all complement one another. I mean, I always say that these soccer kids, you've seen our soccer kids, male and female, you see them out there. They're the best athletes in the school. Their agility, their ability to run back, across the court, forward, back and forth. They're just great athletes, and they learn that from youth soccer. So I always encourage them, play soccer, and then as you progress, then you decide when or what you want to decide. Like lacrosse, we have good athletes in lacrosse, but their catching and throwing is a little bit, for lack of a better word, weak. Like our girls and boys in soccer with their foot skills and the ball skills that they learn from the youth, okay, we've got to get that to our lacrosse kids to just throw, catch, throw, catch, throw, catch.
I think groups like Blackhawks will improve that over time.
Absolutely.
And there's always been a great working relationship between the high school and the different sports organizations, mm-hmm. and I think that's certainly due to your input. How do you view, talking about changes, I mean, if we go back and just look at the simple things like the athletic fields, it's really, we've got a tremendous complex up there no matter what the sport is. Right,
and I think your Heavenly Farm started first, and then it jumped down to us, and we got a chance to play in that. And remember, you authorized the GMC championships there, right? They still talk about that atmosphere. The fields, and that was Joanne Majesto as superintendent. She orchestrated that, and we're playing games. We're changing today, tomorrow. The other team field's wet. Frank, we're going to come to you, and we change right on the spot. And it's not just for the athletes. It's, boy, we use it in phys ed. It's increased the participation level. The kids just love it. And I got to add that our kids really take pride in the field. There's, knocking on wood here, Dave, there's never been really any major destruction to any of the fields. Yeah, we keep a tight lid on it, but they're used a lot, but they do take care of it. And I take pride in the facilities, too. And at my captains' meetings, I talk to the captains about that. Let's take pride in the facilities.
I think that's one of the key things actually in sports, that, look, not everyone goes on to play sports in college and whatnot, but I think it does teach pride, teach teamwork, certainly teaches our student athletes about time management, which is going to help them no matter what they do.
The time management, but when I was at my captain's meeting the other day again, our best leaders in this country, Dave, and you mentioned a bunch of the presidents. I think the majority of them have been athletes. You talk about Ford, who was a president, he played football, Kennedy, being involved in athletics or coaching, it teaches you to make decisions and time management. The decision may be something simple as, do I throw the ball or do I run the ball? Or as a coach, do we pass or do we take a knee or whatever? You learn to make those decisions. And the confidence you gain by being an athlete makes you a better family person, better parent, and certainly a better businessman, because you're used to making decisions. And like you said, you have to learn to get along. You got to learn to get along on whatever this world, life is, whatever you choose, and being an athlete is part of a team. We all can't be the #1 runner. You may be a support player. You may be a backup, and you have to learn how to get along. That's why athletics, great profession.
How does it make you feel when you see so many of the student athletes go on to these tremendous colleges because of the sports that they play?
Well, I think sports have helped a couple of them, okay, but they're also, like John Schlafer, he's a 4.3. if he wasn't a state champ in wrestling, would he have gotten into Princeton? I cannot answer that. Would Amir got into Princeton? If it wasn't for basketball, would Rachel got into Penn? If it wasn't, I can't answer that, but it helps because they want well-rounded people. They want people that can bring pride to their school and honor by being an athlete, and they know that these kids have already learned to balance them both. So it's a win-win for everybody. I just feel bad for college athletes. I just think it's the pressure, especially scholarship players. It's like the pressure all year round, because don't forget that coach, his job is W's and L's. I don't care what you say, it's God level. And they just push these kids, push these kids, push these kids.
Yeah, well, you see some movement even with the Northwestern University students, athletes who've tried to unionize, because I think you're right. I mean, the NCAA has got to do something with respect to that.
Right.
You know.
And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go.
You've had some great coaches to work with over the past 37 years. You want to just talk about a few of them?
Well, let's start from the beginning. You know, I came here in '77, and I grew up in Spotswood, went to South River, and back then South River and East Brunswick, hated them. I remember shaving my head my junior and senior year of football because that was going to help us win the game, Dave. Doesn't that help you win the game, shaving your head?
Come on, it's attitude, spirit, yes.
So, well, it didn't help, but anyway, then when I came to East Brunswick and met guys like John Emery and Dud Ty and Don Weeder and Jack Brophy, I said, wow, these are quality people. These are quality people. And then that tradition of those guys and Jay Doyle and Liam Florick passed down to Dan Haston, hopefully me, to the Bo Hennings and the Chris Yanazos and the Sherry Gronskys and all these young coaches that we have now, that it's just amazing. And then when they come back and they teach and coach with you, it's a great thrill. I just can't tell you what it's like to have a former athlete teaching or coaching in the building. And yeah, it's a sense of pride, even if you had a little something to do with it. You know, maybe a little advice you gave them in an interview or something. It's because I think we have quality kids in East Brunswick. So yeah, that's one of my highlights, seeing our kids come back and coach or coach in other districts.
EBTV has been actually a big supporter of the sports programs, and it kind of memorializes what our student athletes do. And what have you felt about the coverage in terms of?
Oh, it's outstanding, and I tell Dave and Pags. As a matter of fact, Pags always makes me take him out to eat when. Nah, just kidding. And I've known Pags as a student athlete, and I taught Dave driver ed way back, and it's memories for these kids. I mean, on tape, done professionally, that they'll save forever. And not only that, a coach will say, can I see a tape? And these guys will help out where they send the tape. So they just create memories for these kids. And I just hope the parents and the kids appreciate it.
Let's actually just talk about parents for a second. What advice would you give parents in terms of how they should be approaching you know, athletics and their student athletes?
Be involved and love your kid. Be involved, be it the band, whatever the school activity. Get involved with your kids. They're going to tell you they don't want you there, you don't need to be there. But be involved. And don't just be the parent because your son's starting point guard or the quarterback and you're walking around like this. How about the parent that's sitting up there and their kid has no chance of getting in today? It's a close game and it's raining and it's cold. And that sophomore looks up and he sees mom and dad sitting here cheering him on. Is that love? Is that what this is all about? So get involved, be supportive, listen to them. And, you know, like that saying says for elementary people, don't believe everything your kid says and we won't believe everything your kid tells us, you know. And communicate to the coach, you know. But have your son or daughter, if there's a concern, do that first. Go to the coach. Coach, what can I do? How can I do this? I really want to make the team. What can I do to improve? And then just communicate, because there's 1,000 ways to make a team or be successful. At the same time, sometimes, Dave, it's just not going to happen. I mean, it's a big school, 2,200 kids, quality athletes. We have freshman athletes, as you know, that are now starting on varsity. How about when Heather was a freshman? We had 4 kids start freshmen on the freshman soccer team. 4. Can you imagine it? So for 4 years, those positions are going to be taken. So it is very competitive. So support them, let them experience as much as they can, and then because I'd rather have my kid involved in the sport than not. And there's sports, you know, some sports don't cut, track, wrestling. I mean, they don't cut per se. I mean, if we're not babysitting, we're not going to babysit the kids. So there's plenty of things out there for them to do. Get them involved in the schools.
Speaking of children, you have 3 daughters that went through the school system. What's it like being the athletic director / parent who has to watch their children participate in sports? I'm sure that was some mixed feelings.
In my freshman yearbook, it had profession, and it said your goal was to be a professional athlete. So I stretch it and figure, well, I was getting paid and watching my daughters play, so that's kind of like a professional athlete. No, that's a thrill to walk down the hallway and, you know, your kids, they'd put their head down and be embarrassed, and all their friends would go, "Hi, Mr. Knopp, hi, Mr. Knopp," or whatever. But it was always a thrill for me watching my friends, the coaches, coach them and work with them and watch my kid compete, or walking down the hallway. And that's the highlight of my career. And that's why we came to East Brunswick. My wife said it's a great school. We came here 30 years ago. And it was one of the best decisions we ever made, is staying in East Brunswick. And I hear that from parents, that they come to East Brunswick because of the schools. And until you're living it and experience it, you don't understand. But when you say to Mrs. Jones or Mrs. Smith, "How's your daughter like school?" Or you ask the kid and they go, "Oh man, great. We were so well prepared." Now my kids, and I love them dearly, they were like C's in East Brunswick, and they would tell me that they were so well prepared in college, especially with the writing and the literature.
Yeah. We have to get a well-rounded education here.
Oh, absolutely.
You've recently started a new kind of Hall of Fame for some of your staff. You want to talk about what that is?
It took a while to get going. We have a Hall of Fame for the coaches. We started last year. Don't forget, school opened in '58, first graduating class, 62, 63, something like that. Because before that, they used to go to South River. The East Brunswick kids would go to South River. And so we came up with this idea of an athletic Hall of Fame. We had our first class last year, some names that people would know: Don Weeder, Jay Doyle, our first athletic director; Charlie King, our second athletic director; Reggie Carney, Lou Cosa, missing one, Don Weeder, I said, Dud Ty, who the track's named after. These were the cornerstones of athletics at East Brunswick, and role models for anyone at any time, for anything, for education, being a parent or being a sport. And that was our initial class. And they're going to do it every 2 years. Most people don't do it every year because it gets watered down, so it's every 2 years. And there's no magic number how many you bring in. There's a formula in how many. But it's that was one of my proudest moments too, presenting them with their Hall of Fame and get that started. And eventually, maybe for the athletes, but it's so difficult. Think about how difficult that would be, from Dave Wall to Heather to Josh Miller. How do you compare these people?
Going back to the coaches that you just talked about, you've got to certainly take a lot of pride in the fact that you've kept that tradition. When the coach retires, that you've kept that tradition by hiring some tremendous coaches and keeping the excellence in athletics going.
Gee, I think it is, Dave. I think it all goes from those guys, those cornerstone guys. They teach the young guys, and then the new guys come in and they learn. It's just a learning process. You learn to do it the right way. Do it the right way from the people ahead of you. Bo Henning, Reggie Carney, what great teachers. Our basketball program, boys and girls, is a direct result of those two guys.
Well, you've got to give yourself a little credit for that.
Thank you. But when you watch the practices, the way they play, their offense or defense, and just the verbiage, everything they say, it's like Reggie or Bo saying it 20 years ago. So it's the tradition of keeping the people within happy, molding them, and hiring people within, because Christian Azzo's got, I know I mentioned him before, and there's others out there, he's got great pride in East Brunswick. He's a Big E winner. Well, maybe not a Big E, but close. Sorry, Chris. He graduated from here. He had like 12 letters here as an athlete. Now he coaches here and teaches here. He takes a lot of pride in that. So it's not a lot of transit in our coaches,
What have you seen in terms of, there's certainly been a lot of changes with respect to the girls' athletics over 37 years? I mean,
well, Title IX changed that in '72, and Charlie started, and Joanne supported, and I hopefully, and well, you did it with the girls' soccer in the township, and equal opportunity, and our girls' athletic program is just probably second to none in the state. From tennis, we've had state championships in tennis, volleyball, softball's outstanding, and soccer we don't want to go into. We've had state champions in track, but our girls, and I think it's the parents understand the value of athletics, and they encourage their girls at young ages to be involved in athletics. Years ago, it wasn't cool to be an athlete and be a female, and now, you know, that's all changed.
Absolutely.
Right.
If you look back, is there any one particular memory that you can talk about?
Team, individual, selfish. The first time at a basketball game as a head coach, playing the national anthem, that got to me. Running out on the football field as a football coach, that stuff is neat. But walking into the phys ed office back in '77, Dave, my hair was long, but it wasn't long. And these guys were all crew cut, Marine type guys. They busted me. They threatened to cut my hair. That memory, walking in there and being so well received by the entire East Brunswick school community, guys like John Mansfield, the former principal, and you know, that's something I'll never forget.
And what does the future hold for Mr. Knopp?
Oh boy, I don't know. I'd like to get back into some heavy running. Never been to an opening day baseball game. You know, never been to spring training.
So it sounds like you got your bucket list ready.
Nah, it is a short bucket list, Dave. Haven't thought much about it because we're so involved in everything right now. And I guess at the end of the summer, July 31st is when I'll be sitting on the beach and I'll say, well, what am I going to do now?
Well, our time's up, but I really want to thank you for all the tremendous work that you've done in East Brunswick over the past 37 years as the athletic director and being involved, because you've touched so many lives of our children athletes, student athletes, you know, that you may not want to come out. I know that you're a very private man and a humble man, but certainly your leadership has led to a successful sports program. But more importantly for me, you've touched the lives of so many of our student athletes, and you talked about them coming back. I think it's partly because of you that they come back. You know, you've instilled in them the want of improving your community, of giving back, and not only for yourself but for others. I still remember, it's a great program that you probably started where, you know, I think it's what the 9th or 10th graders come back and talk to the 8th graders at Churchill.
Right.
So I think those type of things are very important, and I want to thank you on behalf of a grateful East Brunswick community for your service. Wish you the best in retirement. I know that you'll be very active, and I'm sure I'm going to see you run along the roads here in East Brunswick. But Frank, it's been a pleasure.
And I just want to add this. I just realized this the other day. I never said I was going to work when I always said I'm going to school. You know, I never said I was going to work, and someone pointed that out. One of my daughters pointed that out to me. Dad, you're going to work. You're not going to school. I said, no, I'm going to school. So it's always been fun. But thank you.
All right. I appreciate everyone watching Toll East Brunswick, and if you have a chance to see Frank Noppenberger here in East Brunswick, reach out and congratulate him for 37 years of great work on behalf of our student athletes. Again, thanks for watching.